Hello, everyone. We are finishing up this month's theme of democracy this week. This week's message is one of change for the better. I will begin with some opening words. This is a congregation that gathers in faith, not faith in one religion or one God or any one way. We gather in faith of the power of diversity, the power of love, and the hope of a world transformed by our care. We gather in faith in ourselves and those around us, not a faith that requires perfection or rightness in one another. Rather, a faith that in our shared imperfection, we may learn to stumble and fall together. Faith that we will help one another to rise and to try again and again. We are Unitarian Universalists. It's now time for our chalice lighting. I'm going to light the chalice in front of me. If you have a chalice or a candle at home, feel free to light it as well. This week's chalice lighting is called A Spark of Hope by Melanie Davis. If there were ever a time for a candle in the darkness, this would be it. Using a spark of hope, kindle the flame of love, ignite the light of peace, and feed the flame of justice. Our first reading is My Heart Fights for Those Who Can't Fight by Sarah Sutherland Dean. Someone called me a bleeding heart liberal. It was not intended as a compliment. However, I will always consider it one of the biggest compliments of my life. My heart bleeds for the underdog. My heart fights for those who cannot fight. My heart rejoices in seeing others overcome adversity. My heart desires love and peace for everyone. My heart is compassionate and empathetic. My heart sees pain in others and wants to help. My heart believes in equality. My heart sees the good in people. My heart chooses action over fear. Our second reading is, Yes, I Want to Live in a Welfare State. For years now, my conservative friends have asked me, do you really want to live in a welfare state? I've thought about it, and I've decided, yes, I do. I want to live in a welfare state. If we define welfare in the original meaning of the word, the condition of being or getting along well, to fare well, then yes, I want to live in a welfare state. If welfare means that my well-being and the well-being of everyone else means that we all have healthy food, clean water, clean air, proper housing, and affordable, if not totally free education, and full access to complete health care throughout our lives, then yes, I want to live in a welfare state. If welfare means that we take care of the earth and the destructive practices that are poisoning the planet we are blessed to share, and begin to implement policies and practices that support and sustain our lives and the lives of generations to come, then yes, I want to live in a welfare state. If welfare means that people, and not corporations and corporate profits, are the primary concern of our politicians and our national and international policies, then yes, I want to live in a welfare state. If welfare means that the rights of all people to live in safety are protected by sensible laws that protect the citizens and children against violence, and those who would place personal freedom over the good of all people, then yes, I want to live in a welfare state. If welfare means that all people, regardless of their color, spiritual or ethical beliefs, gender, sexual orientation, or political views, are afforded the same rights and privileges as everyone else, then yes, I want to live in a welfare state. If welfare means that all people, without exemption, are given the right to vote without fear of harm, reprisal, or discrimination, and that money plays no part in whether a person can run for and hold office, then yes, I want to live in a welfare state. If welfare means that our justice system does not favor corporations or one part of society over any other, then yes, I want to live in a welfare state. If welfare means that our prison system is one that's not run by for-profit corporations, that its purpose is restorative and not retributive or punitive, and one that sees the humanity in all people, difficult as that might be at times, then yes, I want to live in a welfare state. If welfare means having an economic system that is not exploitative of workers and does not perpetuate an oppressive class system, one that ensures that all people have the dignity of work and a fair and livable wage, then yes, I want to live in a welfare state. If welfare means that our system of taxation is fair, progressive, and free of loopholes that favor the wealthy and corporations over all others, then yes, I want to live in a welfare state. If welfare means that each of us care for the other, that the least among you is cared for and loved as much as everyone else, that racism, sexism, ageism, and all negative and harmful isms become a thing of the past, that we all support each other in living our lives to their fullest potential, and that we are all faring well, then yes, I want to live in a welfare state. In fact, I want to live in a welfare world. This week's sermon is called The Democracy Principle by Reverend Jill Cowie. For context, I believe this was written in 2017. Last month, a group of us shared a list of what we trusted, of what we put our faith in, and democracy was high on my list. As we talked about our doubts, I wondered if this was true. Years of Supreme Court rulings that privilege the rich, suppress voting rights, and make money the determining factor of our electoral process has eroded my faith in our democracy. Two professors who studied the electoral process from 1981 to 2002 found that the preferences of the average American appear to have only a minuscule, near zero, statistically non-significant impact upon public policy. Add to this that a GOP senator had to raise $89,000 a week to fund his 2016 bid, and that the Koch brothers and the DeVos family and 16 other billionaires have spent the last 15 years to strategically use the Supreme Court to rig a free market to act on their behalf. I grieve for our democracy, and I know that I am complicit. For too long, I have engaged in the magical thinking that democracy is protected simply by the virtue of our founders who birthed it. Alone, I get lost in my grief. But with you, another possibility awaits. What if Valerie Kaur is right, and that our future is not dead, but still waiting to be born? What if this time is our great transition, and that instead of grieving, we feel enormous rage? What if we claim the power of revolutionary love and labor for others who do not look like us, for our opponents who hurt us, and for ourselves? Can we, as Kaur suggests, restore our democracy to one that respects the dignity and worth of all beings and truly honors our interconnectedness? What does this democracy look like? Researcher and author Frances Moore Lappé writes, "Humans thrive best when communities we create enable each of us, not just a privileged few, to experience a sense of power, a knowing our voices count, a sense that our lives have meaning beyond our own survival, and that we have a satisfying connection with others. Add those together," she says, "and what do you have? The essence of democracy, the essence of revolutionary love, a love that is sweet labor, fierce, imperfect, life-giving, a love that is a choice that changes you. And where strangers were welcome and differences could thrive. A land where freedom of religion would unleash people's spiritual energies to create a pluralist culture where strong convictions could coexist peaceably, as perhaps nowhere else on earth. A land where an intensely religious and diverse nation managed to combine the adage, "In God we trust," with its original motto, "E pluribus unum," out of many, one. For our founders, a labor of love. When the Constitutional Convention was close to breaking down into bickering in 1787, an elderly Franklin said this to the assembled gathering: "We have been assured by the sacred writings that except the Lord builds the house, they labor in vain to build it. I firmly believe this, and I also believe without his concurring aid, we shall succeed in this political building no better than the builders of Babel. We will be divided by our little partial local interests, and we ourselves will be a reproach and a byword down to future ages." Alexander Hamilton quipped back in reply, "We don't need any foreign aid." But the assembly was so startled by the pious suggestion by the old Unitarian rogue that they recalled their better selves. Washington too believed the religious impulse enabled people to lay aside private gain and personal advantage in favor of the common good. Nowhere was this truer than in the economic market. Franklin advocated heavy levies on the rich to promote the common good. Thomas Paine lobbied for a progressive income tax and inheritance tax to establish funds that would help workers during business downturns and provide a stipend to families with young children. Today, our founding fathers would be repulsed by how their concept of freedom has been manipulated by judges and politicians alike to create free markets that embolden and empower only the rich. I don't know if it is because 3 of the founders were Unitarians, but I sense their revolutionary spirit in the 7 principles we have promised to practice together. Our 5th principle, the use of the democratic process in our church and our society at large, is the keystone that makes the practice of the first 4 principles matter and the last 2 principles possible. The first 4, to honor the dignity and worth of every person, to practice compassion, acceptance of one another, and to search for truth and meaning, becomes real and relational when we use the democratic process. Using the democratic process makes possible our 6th and 7th principle of world peace, justice, and respect for the interdependent web. Democracy is the keystone of our faith. I remember the day this keystone became clear for me. The year was 2007, and Bill Zinkford, the UUA's first African American president, opened our annual General Assembly by asking the 5,000 delegates present, "What are our truths? To whom must we be reconciled?" He went on to say, "We have many stories to uncover: genocide, slavery, oppression. Only by knowing our truths can we act boldly on our spiritual journey with healing." When have you experienced this feeling of revolutionary love? Maybe a time you found your voice and empowered others in doing so, or a moment of connection with a community that changed you. A moment you said to yourself, "This is what democracy looks like, feels like." I can share one moment from a person no longer here. He experienced a life-saving moment, a deep sense of connection, the day Martin Henson from Black Lives Matter Boston came to this church. As a young person of color, he felt affirmed and found his voice. But he and his family have left this church because he and his Black Lives Matters t-shirt doesn't feel welcome in this sanctuary. He doesn't feel safe in public or in school, for good reason. He has been jumped multiple times by his peers. How can we create a safe place for him here? How can we, as Naomi Penniman suggests, learn from our hiccups for him and others of this generation. We need to make our revolutionary love visible to truly dare democracy. William Hastie, our country's first African American federal appellate judge, once said, "Democracy is becoming rather than being. It can easily be lost, but never is fully won. Its essence is eternal struggle." In this era of enormous rage, we need to see the fires burning around us and wonder, what if this darkness is not the darkness of the tomb, but the darkness of the womb? What if our future is not dead, but still waiting to be born? What if this is our great transition? Remember the wisdom of the midwife, says Valerie Kerr. Breathe, she says, and then push. Because if we don't push, if we don't breathe, we will die. Revolutionary love requires us to breathe and push through the fire with a warrior's heart and a saint's eye, so that one day you will see every child as your own. You will tend to the wound in the ones who want to hurt them. You will teach them how to love because you love yourself. You will whisper in each ear, "You are brave. You are brave." We are brave. Let us push through the fire with a warrior's heart and a saint's eye, becoming together revolutionary spirits of love. It is time to extinguish the chalice. I am going to blow out the candle in front of me. If you have lit a candle at home, feel free to blow it out as well. When we take fire from our chalice, it does not become less, it becomes more. And so we extinguish our chalice, but we take its light and warmth with us, multiplying their power by all our lives and sharing it with the world. And now some closing words. There is too much hardship in this world to not find joy every day. There is too much injustice in this world to not right the balance every day. There's too much pain in this world to not heal every day. Each of us ministers to a weary world. Let us go forth now and do that which calls us to make this world more loving, more compassionate, and more filled with the grace of divine presence every day. Thank you for listening to this week's service, and don't forget to drop off your ballots in the drop box. Have a great week.